So I often ask myself, more so than ever these days, just where is Games Workshop going with Warhammer 40K? Now, I'm still a Warhammer 40K enthusiast. It's interesting to see how my gameplay has changed over the years, how that style has evolved, and it's kind of come full circle. I originally started playing 40K as what you would now call a narrative player. It was essentially basement battle reports. I'd get together with my buddy Naps and Dom and Miguel every Friday and Saturday. We would just play 40K, put miniatures down, play what we have to play. You spent the week building and painting and buying miniatures that you didn't tell your friends about so you could show up and play them. And that type of 40K with really no regard for balance and just seeing what we can do on the table was how I played for a long, long time. Then as things became a little bit more organized and I became part of a gaming club, I moved to competitive play. I moved to tournament play. And as a narrative player, the reason for that was to literally get a little pressure put on me to become a better player. For those of you who have been following my channel for some time, Way of Sam Han, that's what the entire thing was about. I had a Jetbike Eldar army, still do, still love it, still play it. I had to get good fast. The way you get good fast is jump into the pot of boiling water. Enter that pressure cooker. So competitive play for a long time. Now I'm back to narrative play. And that really kind of reflects my play style and some of the tactics that I explore in 40K, which I'm going to start pushing up to the channel here, focusing on Grey Knights and Tyranids. We'll get to Chaos. We'll get to Black Templars. But I say that because I feel like Games Workshop now has nowhere to go. Nowhere new to go with 40K. And I'm not talking about the newest limited release that if you don't pick it up now, you're going to miss it. But it's interesting how 40K evolved over the years, where you always had your kind of infantry, and I'm going to use some outdated terms here, but it's part of the progression. You had your infantry, you had your champions, you had your monsters, creatures, and you had your tanks. Then Forge World, Titans, super heavies, these kind of experimental flyers, these experimental models, which were fantastic kits at the time. And they kind of had Forge World rules to include. They were a little bit wonky or not all there, but you knew you were buying essentially a showpiece piece, a resin cast piece, and you wanted to play it on the table, so they gave you something. But that wasn't necessarily official 40K. And for a long time, this was 40K, whether GW changes the rules or adds units, take away units. Then you started to see the incorporation, and this is going back a number of years, to Apocalypse and super heavies and these larger-than-life tanks. And then they introduced flyers, but they didn't have kind of the full flyer rules. They were just kind of tanks that just float above the table. Then we got proper flyer rules. Now we have kind of Knights and Titan-based rules. And, of course, Psyker rules and Space Elf magic and all that type of warp magic and stuff. So at this point, we even kind of have somewhat mock artillery, even though the table certainly isn't big enough for it. So now I'm looking at 40K and saying, well, they have taken what was essentially a skirmish game, transformed it into kind of a lower-level snapshot of a battlefield, heroic battles in a moment. And the idea always was with 40K, you've got your army and you're playing it, but this is just a small snapshot of the bigger battle. There's this massive battle going on, to the left of you, to the right of you, above you, possibly even below you. And certain units were considered to be like on the table happening. Like, yeah, we're fighting alongside, and there's some Titans somewhere on the table fighting, but I'm never going to have the model. Well, GW adding to this and essentially bringing in all these elements into a war game, the scale really doesn't make it bigger or more possible to play more. I'm not talking about more models and bigger tables. What new are they going to introduce to 40K? So if they're not going to introduce anything new to 40K, what developments are there really going to be for 40K? Those developments are recycling the same stuff, introducing new units that certainly, the Orc, he's probably listening to this vlog. One of my friends who loves Orcs has played Orcs forever. I mean, he's salty. Speed Freaks and other models that are amazing to look at. just absolutely fantastic kits. I mean, you could never kit bash this stuff. And even if you could, buying the model just looks fantastic. Where's the support? Where's the update? Where's the stuff coming from GW? It's like they've released a product that just isn't supported anymore. And I'm not talking about a product. I'm not talking about I'm upset because the board game that I love hasn't had any new expansions, but it's been out of print for 10 years. This is a game, this is a system that GW supports or says to support. So this duality of what new would they possibly introduce, because you have a full-scale game, you can't go any bigger, and you're not going to have the scale down. They did make us buy all Marines, replace the mini Marines with now Primaris Marines, true-scale Marines. Chaos is going to happen at some point, you know it. And in exploring that perspective, if it's not supported by GW and they're not going to take it anywhere other than just the same limited release cycle back and forth, this brings me back to my cycle now. Much of 40K that I play more and more is this narrative. We're not even looking at competitive play. And I'm not taking anything away from competitive GW play. I mean, it was an important part of my life for a very, very long time. Made a lot of great friends that have opened up tremendous 40K possibilities and possibilities outside of 40K that I absolutely would not trade. But I'm at the point now where it's about creating missions. It's about creating scenarios. It's being an enthusiast of the Black Library books, pulling something from there, reading something there, sending that to my friends and being like, look, let's recreate this. So I got my terrain guy making one or two awesome pieces, which then later, we can eBay to kind of put more into community funds or build up our collection. Let's grab some models from different collections and like literally being like, this is what happened in the book, in this chapter. If we create this, would it play out the same way? And for that, we have the core rules, but we're ready to drop some stuff, tweak some stuff, make some stuff up. It's more like setting a story in motion that we can control and seeing the outcome. And I have to say, just accepting the fact that GW is Games Workshop and accepting the fact that this cycle of just releasing stuff and not supporting it, once I'm okay with that, it opens up a lot of possibilities. So I think the future of Games Workshop is the players, the community, taking ownership of the models, taking ownership of the aspects of it and utilizing it from there. Essentially using GW as a starting point, not as the ultimate authority of the grimdark.